Okay, we are live. Hi, this is William Ramsey. Welcome to William Ramsey Investigates. On today's show, I have a very special guest, returning guest. She goes by Criminal Justice Chris, and her blog is at medium.com at Criminal Justice Chris. This will be the second appearance on my show. We talked back in February on a show I titled Occult Son of Sam and the Dark Psychosphere of the 1970s, New York City. And this story is actually part of that dark psychosphere around then, actually leading up to 1983, but a lot of 70s material. And you'll see this article we're going to cover, amongst other articles and stuff that she's been writing. She's been publishing a lot recently, but this article in particular, somebody I haven't covered on my show, his name is Roy Radin, Radin, and the full title of her article is Roy Radin, the Showman, the Schemes, and the Shadowy End. And there's a lot to this guy's story, and a lot that overlaps with some people I've studied, and we're talking about Peter Labenda, but she can talk more about that. So, Chris, welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me.
For people who didn't hear our earlier show or anything like that, maybe you can do a little background, your interests, and what led up to the publication of this particular article, Roy Radin, the Showman, the Schemes, and the Shadowy End.
I'm mostly interested in occult symbolism. And to put this in perspective, I'm going to go ahead and quote a book that you've written, Prophet of Evil, Aleister Crowley, 9/11 and the New World Order. There is an Eliphas Levi quote in it that says, we have said that there's no religion without mysteries. Let us add that there are no mysteries without symbols. The symbol, being the formula or the expression of the mystery, only expresses its unknown depth by paradoxical images borrowed from the unknown. So that's my main focus of research. I also have an undergraduate in criminology with a minor in anthropology. I'm interested in occult symbolism and specific crimes. It's really underestimated how popular the occult is with criminals. I volunteer in maximum security for the Department of Corrections, and it's well documented, even in peer-reviewed research, that the occult is very prominent, specifically Satanism, with convicted criminals. It's more so than the general population. And I'm not saying that all people who practice Satanism are violent and commit crimes. I don't want to be misunderstood, but there is a tendency for them to have higher instances of criminality than the general population. And it's likely influenced by the belief system.
That makes sense. So it's contemporary. So a lot of these criminals, they may not be, it's the court system and criminal justice system isn't really that interested in motivations for crime as much. So a lot of times it's not included in court records of these people's kind of ideological outlook. But yeah, it's there. There's so many crimes too. So many satanic motivated crimes out there that are overlooked or dismissed. It's
I mean, one thing that I can give an example of, and I'm working on a certification in astrology, is Gary Evans. He served time with David Berkowitz. Whenever he was finally arrested the last time, whenever they searched his apartment, they found all sorts of astrology books, and they figured out that he was astrologically charting his crimes.
wow. So David Evans was not just Berkowitz, is that right?
No, Gary Evans. He was a prolific burglar,
Gotcha.
and he also killed. He's classified as a serial killer, but I think it's kind of a loose classification, to be honest, because he killed people that he was partners in crime with that were threatening his financial stability for the most part.
Oh, interesting. He's from New York, died at 43 in 1998. Interesting.
Yeah, he jumped off a bridge.
Stealing antiques in his multiple escapes from custody. That's interesting. So both of these guys are into like this astrological. We know like there was that most recent Mind of Monster, or I forgot the full title of the book, but the guy who spent 100 hours with Berkowitz said he was practicing Satanism up until after his arrest till 1988 or the late 80s or something like
that. Yeah.
and he's
That's my
admitted.
yeah, that's my understanding too. And if you're going to get into astrological charting, then you know that their dates are important, and that's really the premise of my Roy Radin article and research that I did, because he disappeared on May 13th, which is a Roman holiday for Garland Day, and then his body. Um, there's some contradicting reports in the media. One says that his body was found on the 9th of June, which, if you analyze it, you could say, well, that fits in with my analysis of the Son of Sam symbol if you decrypt it and reconstruct it. Or if he was actually found on the 10th of June, that is Judy Garland's birthday, and it was suspected that Mickey DeVinco had something to do with Roy Radin's disappearance at one point.
Oh, interesting. For people who don't know the story of Radin and that era, maybe you could just do a brief overview just to kind of get them acquainted. Who was Radin?
He was into theater. He launched a Roy Radin vaudeville review, which was a traveling showcase that booked stars like Tiny Tim and George Jessel to raise funds for police and firefighters associations. It was found that he was aggressively and misleading fundraising. Like in one expose, it was revealed that he'd raised about $130,000 for the Delaware Fraternal Order of Police, but about 95,000 of it went to his own firm. Businesses reportedly misled into thinking their donations were going directly to law enforcement charities. Then in another case, the Bayonne City Council voted against a probe into Radin's firm after there was a cancellation of the Patrolmen's Benevolent Association that had collected funds illegally. And he had handled similar schemes in Delaware and Florida, with one employee facing impersonating a police officer and using intimidation sales tactics over the phone. So he was ridden in scandal way before he was murdered, years
He was
before.
murdered in 83, but he was very involved in New York. Young guy when he died, 33.
Yes.
But a lot, I think his parents were also involved in Broadway, so he kind of had familial ties to entertainment in New York City. But really strange stories, like a lot of dark parties and black magic and stuff, are the allegations about Radin, right? And connections to the process.
Yeah, I mean, supposedly he had somebody from the OTO that was a female approach Peter Lavenda and asked him to do a video or VCR recording of conjuring demons, and wanted Lavenda and one of his friends to do it, and they thought Radin was unstable, and they denied his request.
Gotcha. So tied to Lavenda. Lavenda's at the Magical Child, known to Berkowitz. Berkowitz is the Magical Child too, like going into to Manhattan. Mm-hmm. So some of the stuff is there's some interesting overlaps with a lot of these things. Yeah.
Yeah, and have you ever looked at the Magical Child New York tarot deck? It's very interesting.
I haven't. I've done a little bit of research into the guy who ran it. His name was Herman Slater.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, total. I mean, just but it was a nexus point for all these occultists. It was kind of like a salon in a way, and included Lavenda. So. But just so many people came in and out of that place and were in its circles.
Yeah, the New York Tarot deck was designed years later, and I believe it was published maybe in '87. And Herman Slater wasn't behind the design of it, but there are a lot of prominent people that are in the major arcana and the lesser people in the minor arcana. But if you look at the deck, it's much different than most tarot decks, and it is interesting historically to look at.
Is it something that ties it specifically to the store, the magical child. Is that right?
Um, I have been told by people that have worked for Magical Child that the tarot deck is worth looking into, for the simple fact that some of the people that might appear in the deck or were
Interesting.
involved with the deck might have had something to do with the crimes.
Interesting. I guess they have a little bit of a publishing house too, so I guess it's here.
Yes.
And that's Grady Lewis McMurtry was one of Crowley's heirs or whatever, so they call it the Grady McMurtry. I have a whole section about McMurtry in my book, Children of the Beast.
Yeah, and I mean, I talked to one Magical Child prior employee, and she had told me that when the Son of Sam letters came out, that she wanted to call Breslin for a tip, but she was too scared to do it. So her boyfriend actually called Breslin. She got bumped up. He got bumped up the chain and gave a tip because she thought that the Wicked King Wicker was a reference to the film The Wicker Man.
Right, it makes sense. Or just the wicker in the occult, right? Just the
Yeah.
wicker thing is, which the Wicker Man references human sacrifice, things like that.
Yeah, and I mean, other than that, she didn't give a reason why she was scared to call herself, but it does raise some questions why this person would be scared to call in a tip.
Good point, right? So they're concerned and worried, right? Yeah.
And it wasn't just a minor Magical Child employee that I spoke to either that stated this, and the person stated it in writing.
And my understanding too is that the guy who made the X-Men series was also involved in the Magical Child. Like
I did not know that.
Yeah, there's some kind of connection between Lavenda, and I forgot his name at the time right now. But these kind of comic book writers were just like Alan Moore, all influenced by occult ideas and things like that.
That's interesting.
Yeah, so Radin, but they got the name, the death of Radin in '83. It got its name, the Cotton Club Murders, right? Can you talk about why that is and how that happened?
Okay, so basically, Radin sought to break into the movie industry, and he landed on the Cotton Club. It was a prohibition-style film about Harlem's legendary nightclub. He got involved with Karen Laney Greenberger, and she was a drug-connected Miami socialite and aspiring film producer.
And a coke trafficker too, right?
Yes. Yeah, and she introduced Radin to Robert Evans, who was a former Paramount Picture executive for films like Rosemary's Baby, Chinatown, Serpico, The Conversation, Godfather 1 and 2. From there, Evans
is involved in some dark projects. Sorry.
Yeah. So the film required financial backing. Radin thought it would cement his place in the Hollywood elites. Evans thought it was a money-making vehicle. Evans was suspected, I believe, at one point for Radin's death, but he was ruled out. And it was because of the association with Radin and Greenberger. He'd met Radin just a few weeks before, and the investigators noted that there was significant tension that was fueled by drugs and Radin ambition. And then you bring in Mickey DeVinco, who had been married to Judy Garland. DeVinco had previously been employed by Radin. DeVinco was also suspected at one point. And there you have the occult symbolism that starts to tie in, where Radin disappeared on Garland Day, which is a Roman summertime ritual that incorporates garlands and was once associated with sacrifice and renewal. Radin also disappeared on Friday the 13th, which is a pagan holiday. And then his body was found either on the 9th or 10th. If it was actually found on the 10th, I'm trying to order an FOIA to see if I can get an exact date, because a lot of times places don't necessarily report things right. But if he was actually found on the 10th, I mean, that raises some eyebrows because his body hadn't been found for about a month, and then all of a sudden it's found on Judy Garland's birthday, whenever he also disappeared on Garland Day. It's kind of odd.
It is odd. I mean, it is strange, and there were all kinds of. I mean, the thing is that the killers was like three people. They're actually Evans pled the fifth during when he was brought up, something to do with Evans pleading the fifth.
Mm-hmm.
But he was definitely questioned enough to have to or want to plead the fifth, which is interesting enough. But there were other people involved. They found out there were other people involved in the crime. But the occult elements of this guy Menser, who some people call him Manson too, is that this guy was traveling around the country killing people. I've heard a suspect of Arliss Perry, possible involvement. I never knew if that's really the case, but Menser is an interesting character in himself, right?
Yeah, I mean, he was a bodyguard for Larry Flint and also Mama Cass from the Mamas and the Papas.
Right. It's interesting. Yeah. So Menser, and then Marty was like a known Jew hater, right? Wasn't there some kind of racial animus there? I remember reading about that.
That's a good question. I'm not sure, but I mean,
Yeah,
Larry Flint also. I mean, you look at him, and he was also riddled with scandals. I mean, he was shot for starters, but then it came out years later in 1988 that he had plotted the assassination of some media rivals, including Hugh Hefner, Bob Guccione, Frank Sinatra, and Walter Annenberg. And the plot's hitman was supposedly Mitchell Werbil, who was a mercenary with deep CIA connections and a history of covert activity. But he died under mysterious circumstances about a month before receiving payments. And it was in the same year that Radin was murdered. I mean, Werbil's death was officially attributed to a heart attack, but there are a lot of things that you can do to kill a person and then make them look like a heart attack.
Right. So there's all these. So Werbil dies in 83. Flint shot in 78, I think. And then Joseph Paul Franklin, who I wrote about in my book about the far right, he was crazy. He thought he shot Flint for racial reasons, which is
yeah, that's starting to come back to me, that he did not like the spreads that he was doing in his magazines. Correct? He was doing interracial spreads and Hustler, and that bothered him.
Yeah, that's right. That was his so-called excuse.
Yeah.
Joseph Paul Franklin is a very interesting guy. That's another person to study why he got away with it for so long. But it was a weird case too, because Radin somehow was lured out or made it out to Hollywood, and that's where he's killed. So he wasn't killed in his kind of in his home territory, so to speak, right?
No, he was killed in California. It happened. He was at a restaurant. He got into a limo at the restaurant. One of the actors from Sanford and Son, I think it was
Wilson.
Yeah, Damon Wilson. He had asked him to follow him and follow the limo in case something happens, and he was able to positively identify the people that had been in the limo. And then you have Maury Terry, who comes in, and goes to the Radin crime scene, and he found evidence that the police had missed, and it was an open Bible, and the spine was broken to Isaiah 22.
Wow.
Which has it has the 22 symbolism. The passage also has apocalyptic overtones and references to the key of David, which is denoted by the symbol X.
Right.
And also, if you look at an X and you look at Chi in the Greek alphabet, it's the 22nd letter of the Greek alphabet. So it's, yeah, the crime scene also had significant symbolism. And I know some have doubted whether Maury Terry actually found a Bible there and thinks that he made it up. But I think that that's not accurate based on him not understanding it. I think if Maury Terry had understood the symbolism, he would have published it. I don't think that he thought through the symbolism as much because he had his hands too full with doing other things, you know.
Right. And he was found in Gorman. It's kind of in they call it the Grapevine here,
Yeah.
Southern California. So he's not in a kind of rural area too, which is kind of strange.
Yeah, I mean it's not, I don't believe it's too far from Bakersfield, California. It's
No,
maybe
it's
about
not.
about an hour away from Bakersfield, and that's where Don Coons was murdered, was Bakersfield, California.
So who is Don Coons? Can you tell people about that?
I did an article on Don Coons back in I think November of 2024. She was murdered in her apartment. David Berkowitz had stated that he knew her from Untermeyer Park, or he'd at least met her once, and she was going to parties in the Hamptons. She had clients. Supposedly, she had been arrested for prostitution and had to leave California. But I obtained access to a Freedom of Information Act report. It was forwarded to me by George from CabDef, and we did an article on it. And I'll be honest, the release is alarming, and I can't believe that the information and it didn't come out sooner. I mean, one of her clients was John Merleau. And when we looked into him, it said in the report that he was a Chico attorney.
Mm-hmm.
And it turns out he had run for a lieutenant governor in California, and he was running the Democratic Party in Northern California. And she had traveled to California with him, and she'd even gone as far to stay with his son and the fiance. There are several clients' names listed in the report. I have a tendency not to believe that Prentice Foreman did it. That's the person that was recently convicted of it.
Oh, interesting.
The DNA evidence that was collected fell out of chain of custody, and there were loose slides in a box. And I really don't understand how he could have been convicted for it, especially when there were so many other suspects that were viable in the police report, including her ex-boyfriend, who was physically abusive and had made death threats and couldn't keep his story straight about the last time that he had sex with her, or including a key that went missing from her key ring.
Interesting.
Yeah, the Don Coons murder it doesn't look quite right.
Doesn't right, like finding naked in a waterless bathtub too is kind of occultic too.
Yeah, and I mean, Prentice Foreman has been trying to appeal, and it's been challenging for him. I've talked to him on the phone twice. I haven't talked to him in a while. I would assume that his attorneys probably advised him, or attorney, that it probably wasn't a good idea to talk to anybody. But I know that he's hoping that the Innocence Project will eventually be able to take over his case, because he vehemently denies murdering Don Coons.
Interesting. So Terry investigated her death, right, as part of this whole 79 is the right time, right? When was Son of Sam? 76, is that right?
It ranged from July 76 to July 31st, 1977, and then David Berkowitz was arrested on the 10th.
And then so many people started dying, right? So there are like tons of deaths after his arrest too, right?
Yes. Yeah, it seems like every time Maury Terry got close to finding somebody to talk to, something happened to them.
They died, or like
died, or a tree got dropped on them, or whatever.
One of the crazy things about Breslin too is that he's involved in Son of Sam, but also was in the pantry when Robert F. Kennedy got shot. Can you believe that? Like, he's in all these places at weird times.
I did not know that.
Yeah. Breslin is something else. He's weird places at weird times. He becomes the center of the story. I mean, he was the center of the whole Son of Sam thing, right? They were sending him letters, but it's strange that he's there in that pantry.
That is interesting.
Right. So Don Coons is part of this web of murders. I mean, I think the title of our last show is actually totally apt, like the dark 70s psychosphere. It's not just NYC, it's nationwide to a certain extent.
Yeah, and I mean, if you look at the Don Coons report, I'm sure that you're aware that Yonkers police that they claim that a lot of the files I'm thinking it was 1987 were water damaged and they had to destroy them. So any FOIAs that you place that happened before the year 87, you're never going to get them.
Interesting.
But some of the Yonkers police reports ended up in the Don Coons file because they'd had them for years, including an interview with one of her clients from South Africa, and also a report on a suspect who is tied to the Son of Sam case, Raymond V. Harrington. And according to the police report, he was invited to move in with Don Coons, and he had been out there at the time of the murder. Maury Terry had looked into it, and he had found that the police suspected Harrington, but they didn't have enough evidence to arrest him, so they had to let him walk. But there were a lot of people that were in California at the time that she was murdered, including Arnold Sachs, one of her clients. And then you have Raymond V. Harrington. He was in California at the time. Her ex-boyfriend, Steve Shirley, was in California at the time. And then Merleau, of course, he lived in California. So
Merlo, right? That's his
yes, Merlo. He also owned a taxi cab company and bid on it in 1976. That's also how we found him. He owned Yellow Cab, and he owned a lot of yellow cabs in California.
Right, back in those days when they actually had like thriving cab stuff. That's interesting. So you were supplied something about Harrington from Carl DeNaro, who I've talked to as well. Yeah.
Yes, he had sent me a 68-page document for an outline for a new book that Maury Terry was planning on writing, and there was information on Harrington in it.
Gotcha. So it's just this web of intrigue. It's interesting that Coons made it off. There's a lot of deaths in California around this time. A lot of stuff.
And Harrington is actually tied to Toko Grady. I don't know how much you know about Toko Grady.
Who's Toko Grady? I saw his name. Yeah.
He was a pretty well known for sexually assaulting people and drugging them. And Harrington was definitely associated with Toko Grady. Toko Grady owned the Unicorn pub. And if you look through Maury Terry's files, and I published this in an article, there is a social media page that shows Toko Grady, and it shows Raymond V. Harrington on it. So people can't say they didn't know one another.
Gotcha. So spiking drinks is not a new phenomenon as well.
No, spiking drinks and sexually assaulting people is not new. And then, I mean, you have Radin, who supposedly Melanie Haller was sexually assaulted at his residence in the Hamptons.
Right. So that's like he was but wasn't there some kind of ritual element involved with his stuff? Like I thought I remember hearing a story about like ritual acts taking place there. Is that right?
I have heard that too. I don't know how much of what went on at Radin's place, I'll be honest.
Gotcha.
I should probably be a little more familiar about everything at Radin's Southampton's residence, but I would have to refresh my memory by looking at Maury Terry's book. I've been told that he had a room with a huge bed.
Yeah.
And people were having orgies in
Yeah,
there.
orgies. I think that's what I remember as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's Melanie Haller's alleged rape victim. The one of the other things that, for people who don't know, the Cotton Club project was one of those projects that was like a catastrophe, right? I couldn't get financing and it was very hard to get made. I remember it didn't come out until much later than after it started, right?
Yeah, I don't think it came out until later, and I think it eventually bombed,
Yeah,
didn't
it was
it?
a bomb too. Yeah, I think it came out in '84. So, but just was like over budget. Took a total of 5 years to complete. That was it. Yeah, and a disappointment.
Yeah.
But nominated for Golden Globes by Best Director, Best Picture. So interesting. Coppola too. Interesting. I mean, it's just part of that web of the 70s and 80s of all these deaths and things like that. It's really something else. But yeah, Radin, Evans is involved in all kinds of occult stuff, and I think they were part of the kind of New York nightclub scene too. I think Evans, Radin, and who's the director of Rosemary's Baby?
Roman Polanski.
Polanski too. Yeah, they were all like going out, if I remember correctly. Yeah, what else you been working on? I mean, is there anything else you want to talk about, Radin?
I've been working on other blogs that have to do with dating with the occult. I mean, I discussed one with you because you had written the book you alerted me to it. I didn't know about it until after I sent it to you, but you said that you had written Prophet of Evil that was related to 9/11 symbolism.
Right. Yeah, I published that in 2010 before S.K. Bain's book. You had mentioned his book. He actually admits in the intro to his book that he referenced my book. It's like the first sentence of his book, actually.
Okay. Yeah, I did not.
I wonder if it's still
remember
there.
that.
It's still there, yeah.
Yeah, but there is some date symbolism going on with 9/11 from an astrological standpoint. Like, for instance, Sun was in Virgo, so Virgo is associated with Demeter and Persephone, and both deities are associated with the Eleusinian mysteries, which occurs on the 11th of September. That's the Coptic New Year or the Egyptian New Year.
Interesting. I didn't know that. So the rites of Eleusis that Crowley was involved in as well had that date. That's interesting.
Yeah, and then you have an asteroid 9/11 that was discovered on 19 March 1919, which was perfectly aligned when the towers fell on September 11th. And mid-heaven, you have the Sirius Dog Star at the time of September 11th attack. And the Sirius Dog Star has Luciferian symbolism due to being associated with Dionysus, which is the religious comparative to Bacchus and Pan. So you go back to Sun and Virgo, and Bacchus has a minor role in the Eleusinian mysteries.
So, here's the acknowledgement here and the acknowledgements. I would be remiss not to acknowledge the contributions of two researchers, authors in particular, William Ramsey, author of Prophet of Evil, Aleister Crowley 9. So this is actually proof I wrote my book before his because he referenced it.
Okay. And then thank you for bringing that to my attention. I did not remember that part, but I'm like 52 and I'm like 52 and like menopausal, so my memory is not the best that it could be.
But here's another interesting thing about your research that ties into this. Lavenda's involved in this book. I call this the most dangerous book in the world, the satanic version of my book. Like, I think it's written from an occultist perspective.
It is definitely written from an occultist perspective, but you know what? I would say that the imagery that they found with the 9/11 attacks is very interesting.
Some of that's in my book. Like there's a direct picture of George Bush. Like, they literally lifted it right out of my book. I mean, maybe they came to find it some kind of independently, but I know that picture because I have that exact picture. So it's a lot of correlations and correspondences and coincidences there. It's something else. Pretty surprising. Anyway, yeah, the 9/11 is a whole complex. I didn't know that about Sirius and all this rights of Eleusis. I didn't know that date at all. So there's a
Yeah,
lot.
neither did I. I actually read an article on Medium by a couple researchers who have their PhD and they're into astrology, a cosmic program. And I read her blog and I thought this is really interesting. And I started looking up some of the things that she had written in her blog and found my own ties. She apparently has a PhD. I think it's either in mathematics or physics, and she was regularly publishing in the scientific community about her findings with astrology. And she and her partner were making some statistical correlations, and the scientific community, from my understanding, kind of ran her out with her research partner with torches because, I mean, the field of science, it's kind of heresy to be studying astrology.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I believe it.
So she has a hard time because of her science background fitting in with the astrology community. They've kind of run her out, and then the scientific community, they've run her out as well. So it's been challenging for her. I feel sorry for her.
That's too bad. I noticed you have a reference here to Hal. That's another kind of crazy. I mean, what's it? 55 though is when it was published, but
Yeah.
it's almost like a background. The style of it is a background to all this madness
Mm-hmm.
in the NYC. Do you get that? Like, it's almost like it inspired some of the letters of Berkowitz or the Son of Sam in some ways. It has a similar tone. Would you agree with that?
I would agree. I've been saying that for about
Oh
3
wow!
years.
Oh wow! I didn't know that.
Yeah, it has. If you look at that article that I wrote,
I'm
related
looking
to
at it now.
Hal,
This is Howl in the Shadows. Yeah.
yeah, it's written in the style of confessional poetry, as well as using the sacred and profane, and I would argue that that's a similar style to the Breslin letter and also the letter before, but it's more pronounced in the Breslin letter. And then if you look at
It's like a
the
declarative style too. Like he's speaking it out. It's not some
yes,
the similar.
yeah, and then if you look at the Alphas Levi symbol, I mean the Gotia circle, the meaning of that in Greek means howl.
Right. Right. So the howling, that's what goetic, like it's a
Yeah,
howl, right? That's what the
hmm
Goetia means, is the
yeah,
howling. So
it means jugglery, black magic, howl, weep, but you can't get past. I mean, before I knew that, the first thing I thought of whenever I read that letter several times is this reads a lot like Allen Ginsberg's Howl. And then I made the discovery with Eliphas Levi.
it makes perfect sense because that's what he was into was I mean, other than his interesting personal tastes, but I didn't know that Minnie Untermeyer was president of the Poetry Society of America too. So
Yeah.
the Untermeyers is just a whole. I've done a show with Rocker Mike about the Untermeyer and Untermeyer Park, and it's almost like they're the couple who were involved in Rosemary's Baby living in Dakota, like really creepy and involved and
Hmm.
tied with a lot of different people.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, I think Untermeyer was there at the founding of the income tax and Federal Reserve, so we can partially thank him to a certain extent.
Yeah.
Crazy. Yeah, I have to go back and read Howl again because I remember one section is 2 Moloch, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
and there was a Moloch that was associated with the cult with Untermeyer. Supposedly, Untermeyer Park, I believe, wasn't it Daniel Carlton Gajusak was identified as Moloch
Oh,
supposedly.
really? So he had like a cult name?
Yes, there was some Moloch worship going on there.
In part to everything, yeah.
Yes.
It's interesting. Like we know that Berkowitz was involved, but he didn't say the day-to-day kind of ritual stuff he was doing and who he was inspired by. I think he mentioned the process. He might have mentioned Crowley. But, like what exactly is the rituals you're doing and stuff. I'd be interested to find that out. Maybe it's out there. I just haven't seen it.
I have been in contact with him for about 3 years, and he hasn't really discussed the rituals that they were into. I know that that's something that's usually not discussed in the occult.
Yeah.
So I've had to back my way into it and do a lot of reading.
Yeah, no, I mean, it'd be interesting. There's so many variations and stuff like that, but it'd be interesting to find out what his actual thinking and what he was really reading. I think that would be something else. But
yeah, it would be good to know. And I've also been told, I mean, I believe he would have been reading as early as high school, because I've been told that the occult was very prevalent at Christopher Columbus High School as well.
Interesting. And that was in Yonkers, is that right?
It was in the Bronx.
In the Bronx, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
And interestingly enough, I'm not sure if you're aware of this, Peter Lubenda went to Christopher Columbus High School.
No, I didn't know that.
He went to Christopher Columbus High School, but he graduated before David Berkowitz started going to Christopher Columbus. I don't believe that David Berkowitz started going to Christopher Columbus until a sophomore year. So they didn't know each other. But he might have likely read Lubenda at that point, because Lubenda wrote for the yearbook and had written an article that would have been published the year that David Berkowitz started at Christopher Columbus High School.
Wow.
After he graduated, yeah.
And at the Magical Child together or whatever. Mm-hmm. Like, some of these guys have connections they don't mention. They don't mention it. So, like, it makes me think of Richard Ramirez, who was a member of the Church of Satan, but nobody ever mentions that he's associated with the San Francisco cult with LaVey and stuff like that. So you don't know who these guys are really hanging out with.
Yeah, I mean, David Berkowitz has told me that he did not know Peter Lubenda until recent years with reading his material and seeing him in documentaries, and that he respects his occult research, especially Nazi research. And he said that he wasn't involved. So there are a lot of coincidences. I agree with you.
Interesting. Chris, we are at the 45-minute mark. Is there anything else that you'd like to add, or what have you been working on, or
just still working on my astrology certification and publishing something here and there whenever I feel like it. I'm not sure what I'm going to publish next. I've also been working on Savino a lot.
Savino, right. For people who don't know the Savino story, I've talked to Rocker Mike about that. Supposedly a Son of Sam hit, but then that's disputed, right?
Yeah. I mean, David denies doing the shooting. I don't think the sketch looks like him. So you just have to take him. You just have to take him for his word that he didn't do it. From what I have been discovering, Savino had quite a few mob connections, and in my opinion, Wendy Savino looks like a mob hit.
It looks like something more like that. It'd be very comfortable for the mob to make people want to think it was the Son of Sam, right? That would be a nice deflection.
You would think so, but I mean, at some point, if there are certain people that keep pushing that agenda, then you have to start evaluating. If you really want to argue that David Berkowitz did it, then you have to say, okay, well, was it a hit? Because it was argued that some of the other Son of Sam crimes were hits.
Right. And snuff films too, right? Snuff films.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think David Berkowitz did it. I don't think the sketch looks like him. I don't think anything adds up to it, and he denies doing it. But if you want to be one of those people that continues to push it with the continued uncovering of mob connections, then you might want to reevaluate your stance.
Right. Where can people find your work? It's on Medium, correct?
Yeah, it's on Medium. It's under Criminal Justice Chris.
And I'll put a link to that. So Criminal Justice Chris at medium.com at Criminal Justice Chris. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we wrap it up?
Nothing else that I want to add, but thank you for having me on.
Yeah, thanks for coming back on, and thanks for all the great work. And and keep in touch. And again, it's Criminal Justice Chris. And we talked about Roy Radin, the Showman, the schemes, and the shadowy demise, which you can go and read on her blog, as well as her research into Shadowy, you can read this stuff, and I got to catch up on your work and how I'm interested in the Howl connections to the Son of Sam. The tone, it's incredible. It's incredible similarities. But anyway, thanks for doing the work, and go and follow Criminal Justice Chris on Medium. Thanks so much for your time.
Okay, thank you.
All right, stay there.